Hello, and welcome to another vlog. This week's theme is patient lifts. I will be releasing a video on Thursday in which I talk in greater detail about this week's theme. But today there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about. First, I'd like to talk about my personal experience using lifts, and in light of the holidays, I'd also like to share some holiday tips with you that are useful for people with disabilities. So let's jump right into it. Um, so as you can see behind me, I have a ceiling lift, and that lift I use to transfer myself from the bed to my wheelchair and vice versa. And speaking from experience, I can tell you that it has definitely made my life a lot easier and given me peace of mind. My transfers used to be done manually, that is, someone had to lift me, but that often resulted in falls and injuries and things like that. So now that I use the lift for transfers, and to clarify, someone does have to operate the lift for me, it has taken away all of that anxiety of, falling, and that has made my life a lot easier. Now, that lift cost probably about $10,000. The lift itself was probably only about $3,000, but the track can cost $5,000 or more. And of course, that doesn't include the cost of things like slings and labor and whatnot. So you can easily see why the price of a lift can be so high. Now, obviously the ceiling lift is the main lift that I use, but I have also used hydraulic lifts. Basically, those are portable lifts that look kind of like a crane that lift people up. They're attached to wheels, and they're used for transfers. Now, I've mainly used those when I've went to camp or stayed in hotels. When you stay in a hotel, you have to rent the lifts and any other hospital equipment that you might need, such as hospital beds and shower chairs and things like that. And this can be costly. So just to kind of explain why, when you rent a lift, you have to pay for a month. It doesn't matter if you're only using the lift for a couple of days, you still have to pay the price of a full month of use, which is about $250. So again, even if you only use the lift for 1 or 2 days, you still have to pay that $250. And as far as I know, there's no government programs that cover the cost of rentals. However, there are some nonprofit organizations, such as Muscular Dystrophy Canada, that sometimes cover those costs, depending on what you're renting and what the logistics are. That will determine whether or not they can cover it and how much they can actually cover. And I know in the past, we've had the cost of rentals covered by Muscular Dystrophy Canada. But like I said, it depends on what you're renting and what the logistics are. Now, the third kind of lift that I've used, and you may remember me talking about this in our vlog about air travel, is an eagle lift. So to recap, when I was young, getting on the planes, when I was younger, what they'd do is they'd put me in something called the Lincoln chair, which was a very narrow wheelchair that fits down the plane's aisle. So they'd put me in that wheelchair and roll me down the aisle, and then they'd have to lift me into the seat, which could be very difficult and stressful. Now what they do is they lift me up using something called an eagle lift, which is a special lift that fits down the aisle of the plane. So they'll lift me up in the lift, roll the lift down the aisle, and then they'll lower me in the seat, which makes it a lot easier to get on and off the plane, which is important because air travel can be stressful, but knowing that it's going to be easy for me to get on and off the plane takes away some of that anxiety. So that's just a brief overview of my personal experience using lifts. Obviously, I can't speak for everybody with a disability, but what I can say is that lifts are a very valuable tool for people with all different kinds of disabilities. So that brings me to my 5 holiday tips for people with disabilities. So I'm going to talk about each of them briefly. So my first tip is to make a plan, and this can be useful for people who aren't disabled as well, for able-bodied individuals as well. The holidays can be stressful, and there is often a lot of uncertainty, but making a plan can eliminate some of that uncertainty, and that's especially good for people with disabilities like autism spectrum disorders, who, like to have routines and things like that and like to plan things out. So my suggestion is to make a list of the holiday activities you plan to participate in, and choosing days and times when you can hold those activities. This brings me to my second tip, which is to choose accessible venues. This is especially important for when you're hosting holiday parties for your colleagues or family members. If you're inviting someone with a disability to the event, and even if you're not, it's important to choose an accessible venue that someone with a disability can go to. Um, Now, in this case, I'm talking particularly about people using wheelchairs. So, if you remember back from our episode about accessibility of the built environment specifically, you'll remember that accessibility has more to it than just having a ramp. There also needs to be enough room inside of the building for someone to maneuver their wheelchair, and there needs to be an accessible washroom. So just keep that in mind when you're booking a holiday party, that you make sure that the venue is accessible, so that any attendees with disabilities can go to the party and enjoy it just like everyone else. Tip 3 is to choose inclusive activities. You want to make sure that you choose activities that people with disabilities can participate in, especially if you have people with disabilities attending the event. Now, right off the bat, that might sound difficult because there's a lot of activities that you do on the holidays that people with disabilities can't participate in at first glance. But from my experience, most activities can be adapted so that someone with a disability can participate in them. So odds are you'll still be able to participate in all the holiday activities that you want to. You just might have to adapt them a little bit so that someone with a disability can participate in them. And also, it's good to have a wide variety of activities because not everyone's going to have the same interests, especially when it comes to the children and the adults, right? Children are probably going to have different interests than the adults, and even some of the adults are going to have different interests. So not only do you want inclusive activities, but you also want a wide variety of activities. So that brings me to the fourth tip, which is not to single anyone out. Speaking from experience, I can tell you how frustrating it is to feel like you're being treated differently or patronized. People with disabilities want to be treated the same way as everybody else because when we don't, we feel like there's something wrong with us and we feel like a burden. And that can make the holidays especially less enjoyable. So just be mindful when you're interacting with someone with a disability that you're treating them the same way you would an able-bodied individual so that they don't feel like they're singled out and they don't feel like they're being patronized, because that's just going to make their time a lot less enjoyable. And this brings me to my final tip, which is to choose gifts wisely. Obviously, you don't want to buy a gift for someone that they can't use. This is especially important for people with disabilities. Now, that's not to say that you have to buy a gift for someone with a disability that's going to make their life easier. You don't. But you do need to buy something or give them something, not necessarily to buy something, but give them something that you know they're going to be able to use, right? So that could be, traditional gifts such as, books, money, gift cards, toiletries, things like that. But you might want to buy something for a person with a disability on your shopping list that they can use and that they will benefit from. And I have some examples of products that you can get. And before we talk about those, I just want to stress that I'm not endorsing any products. These are just examples of products that, as a person with a disability, I think would be useful. Really, the main product that I'm thinking of would be something like a device like Google Home or Amazon Echo. I think devices like this are very useful because you can use them to control electronics hands-free, which is especially useful for someone like me who has limited mobility and may struggle to use certain electronics. So using these devices, people can control their phones, send text messages and make phone calls and things like that hands-free. But you can also buy switches for them that you can use to control things like lights and appliances, and that can certainly make life easier for someone with a disability. Like, I don't have any trouble using something like my phone or my computer, but I can't always change the thermostat if I'm cold. But if you buy a special Wi-Fi switch for your thermostat, you can use Google Home or Amazon Echo or a similar device by another brand to control those things. The point that I'm getting at is just be creative and choose a gift that you know that someone with a disability is going to be able to use. And if you want to go that extra mile and get them something that is going to make their life easier, by all means, go ahead. Just make sure that you're choosing a gift that you know is going to make their life easier, not something that's going to make their life harder. So that basically concludes my holiday tips. I hope you enjoyed this week's vlog. This is my last vlog of 2017, so I won't see you again until 2018, but I will still be releasing my video on Thursday. So I hope you tune into that video, and I hope to see you next year.